Hey, it might work out. We don't know. We might listen back.
So welcome to Thunderwudgie.
Episode 8 or 9 or 10.
We don't know.
It's one of them.
We're coherent.
It's the middle of the night after a long work day. I'm Reese.
I'm Teej.
And I'm Annie.
And we're tired.
But glad you're here.
We're glad to be with each other.
And you're glad you're here too. I just know it. Question number 1 on the docket today. What got you into Harry Potter? What was your introduction?
So, for me, Harry Potter, I was introduced to Harry Potter when I moved to Michigan. So I was in 3rd grade, going into 4th grade, and one of our neighbors gave it to me, the first book. And again, I think around that time, pretty much right away, I read the first chapter about the Dursleys, and then I was like, this is boring, and I hate it, and then I put it down. And then I didn't pick it back up again till 3 books were out already, and people had started to talk about it at school, and so I kind of went back, and I was like, I can trudge through this. So it is kind of cool now to think that was kind of a gift as I transitioned to a new place from Virginia to Michigan. And, you know, if I had read it right then, it would have been something probably very comforting and, you know, cool to kind of get into and to talk about. But it did take me a little while to get into them.
Well, I was about 8, and I remember being at an American Girl doll party at a bookstore. So all the girls brought their American Girl dolls, and they sat around a circle and talked about their American Girl dolls, and it was torture being there.
I say that. Wait, this is not a nightmare.
It was like a tea party.
I'm sorry, wait.
And I saw this huge display of. I was like 8, so I saw this huge display of brand new books that had a little girl on the cover with glasses holding a wand, and I thought, why would anybody give a little girl that gross haircut? So I turned to my friend and was like, what is this crap? And I could like barely read, and it was in this like weird magical handwriting. And I was like, why would you name a girl Harry, and why would you give her that haircut? Oh, maybe it's a boy. And then one of the moms was like, this is evil. And she started turning around all the covers so you couldn't see the cover. And I was like, oh, well, I immediately need to read this book.
That's hilarious.
So when the mom walked away, I picked up the book and started reading it.
So at that time, was there... Yeah, so the first one was out, because that's around the same time that I picked it up as well. When the third one was out, I found them in the library, and so they had a number of them together. But
well, like I started reading it there, but I couldn't buy it because I was 8 and didn't have any money. So I just like put it down and was like, I'll come back to you. And then when I was like 14, maybe 13 or 14, the 4th book had just come out, and a friend that had the books loaned me number 4 because they had just finished reading it. And so the first book I read was actually number 4.
Really?
And I was hooked. Like,
that would be kind of cool to start it then.
Sense?
But yeah,
it was
she
fine.
does some
it was
kind
like
of
it was like
intro
this
stuff.
is the book I have access to, so I'm just gonna read it. I had never read Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So I just read number 4, and then I went back to number 1 and read 1, 2, and 3.
I feel like that would also change how you read the first books, like kind of knowing sort of the direction some of it goes.
But it went from like the age of 8, where I had like read the first chapter while just waiting for a tea party to be over, to the age of 14. But which was also cool because I was 14 reading number 4. So
they would have been around
14.
that age too.
Yeah.
So anytime it came out, there were a lot of... My family would start by reading it. You know, we'd fight over who had the book first. But so we got a system down eventually. But my parents ended up buying 2 books. My sister would get one. I'd get the other. And my brother would listen on CD. The Jim Dale CDs. So it got a little excessive, but now it's nice because I have some of those books from then. So, but anyways, yeah, so it's just, I don't know, we always would read it, like I'd want to read it to talk with my sister about first, and then friends. So.
None of my siblings cared about with the books. I mean, my youngest sister really liked the movies, and she wanted to get her Hogwarts letter. So we had that happen when she turned 11.
Aww.
But none of them really got into the books.
Yeah.
Ever. It was just me. I'd get into it with friends. But, yeah.
I'm older than you guys, so I'm...
No, it was your unique experience.
Well, I remember one girl in my friend group in high school talking about reading them and just being kind of like, whatever, you know. This is also the girl that talked about Xena, and I was also like, whatever.
Zener.
Which I eventually then loved. So
we're going to
whatever.
need a t-shirt that just says Zener.
My mom worked at the library, so I remember her, I mean, so she would always kind of know what was becoming a thing before it was a thing. So I think she saw the books going in and out before it really was a thing. And that she was reading it, because she was always kind of curious, like, what are kids reading? What are people reading? What's the big stuff? I very clearly remember teasing her about, there was all the hype about, you know, a beloved character is going to die, you know, and so when she had that book, we all, like, grabbed it. I don't know, it was, like, home from college, or I don't remember when that would have been, but, and my dad opening up the back of the book, and, you know, he's really good at faking things, so he would, like, as Hermione's funeral came to a close, Harry, you know, and I was like, stop, you know, which I thought was hilarious. So, but at that time I was like, I don't even know who these people are, I don't care. And then I don't know what would have convinced me. I remember I had moved to this area, and for whatever reason I did read them, but I got hung up at Order of the Phoenix, where I couldn't deal.
It's a rough book.
Don't even get me started
so
on
I
that.
quit. I quit then. I actually was like, I think I plotted through them and was like, oh, this is okay, this is fun. And then I just like couldn't will myself to read any further than that.
Before we discuss The Order of the Phoenix as a book, I think we all need to reread that one.
Yeah.
Why?
I've only just started number 3. Because it's a lot. That book is a lot. There's a lot of feelings. There's
I was
going to
say, I love rereading all, and I am trying to read them in order so that I can give Phoenix a fair shot, you know, that but it's just, I was remembering this recently, and so my Latin teacher in high school just passed away. And he was gone for a semester, and so we had a teacher that came in, and she just was, I mean, not to the same torturous abuse, but was just very rough. And we had she drove us crazy. So we called her Umbridge. Mm-hmm. And again, just that reminder of that experience. And as you read the books, like, she just is the most torturous part for me, because it's just like, why are you still here? And why can't they do anything about it? And then Harry's just, you know, if he was handling it better, which again, I don't know how I would handle anything that he did in that book, but just, it would be easier to read because you'd feel bad for him, but I'm kind of like, why are you this way? Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Anyways, so when did you kind of get back into the books after stopping?
I don't know why. I had this like big life-changing event, and then when I was trying to figure out what to do next, I didn't want to read any of the stuff that I had been reading before. I was just like not up for any of the usual things that I was reading. So for some reason at that point, I started reading them again. I don't know why. I don't know if I was just kind of browsing around the library or what would have put that in my mind to give them another go. And I read through them all. And it really resonated with me. I started at one again, because I don't even know if I really even remembered much about, because this would have been, you know, maybe 6 or 7 years after the last time I would have tried to read them. so I don't think I would have remembered much. But they were like totally what I needed at that point in my life. So it really resonated with the kind of the struggles of characters and, you know, just kind of questions of life and what's my purpose and where am I going and, you know, this kind of stuff. And so it really made a impression on me. But, you know, felt kind of dumb, you know, being at that point in my life and that the age that I was, you know. But
who resonated the most, I think, at that time with you as a character?
Were you in your 20s at this point?
No, I would have been 30.
So it resonated with an 8-year-old to a 30-year-old at various points in
no, more of
people's
like
lives.
as he like at the end, you know, where he's like really questioning like who is a Dumbledore and what is he about and have I been duped all along and why am I doing what I'm doing and do I really believe these things and like all that kind of stuff.
But what is my purpose now that this thing
Yeah.
has happened?
Yeah, and do I want to make these hard choices because like I'm really being faced, you know, with all this, you know, death and destruction and challenges and I mean, because he's constantly kind of confronted with like, do you want to take the easy way out or do you like, you know, I mean when Rufus Scrimgeour is like,
Yeah.
hey, will you work with us? Or, you know, like all these things, right? I feel like those are adult themes, you know?
Yeah.
That I don't know how much, I don't want to say how much kids can get, because I think kids are capable of more than...
They're generally given credit for.
Yeah. But at the same time, they're also dumb, too, because I was dumb, you know. But anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know. I think it's like anything. You receive what you can. So like, there's an unfolding there. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's the stuff that I don't know if it was a character as much as like I felt like the struggle that Harry goes through kind of resonates, and that kind of choice of like. Like part of his struggle is, do I want to be isolated in an individual and basically kind of turn into Voldemort, cut myself off from other people, you know, because of, you know, either warped ideas of that this is better for them or whatever, or do I want to make these hard choices and have relationships and stuff like that, so.
So what about Harry Potter resonated with you?
I think originally, I mean, as I started out, it was just kind of the cool adventure of friends coming together. I think as a kid, like, that was kind of cool. This place where magic exists, and again, you know, you find your best friends and you're figuring out life. Mm-hmm. But I think it is, and as the books progress, I can see, and now reading them, probably there is different things, like even as we talked about, we've talked at least on our own, if it's not on this podcast, but Dumbledore, and kind of, he brings out different feelings, and kind of as I read it as a kid, and even sometimes now I still kind of hold on to this idea of Dumbledore, but it's like when you start to really look more at the end and kind of, every character is more complicated than they originally seemed, and some of the things they struggled with, and so I think one of the things that you mentioned as well, just the idea of, you know, at different points along the way, he still would have been hunted, I guess, by Voldemort, but he could have given up, or he could have not gone after the Horcruxes, or there are a number of things. Mm-hmm. I think about that sometimes. I'm like, well, I don't know if I would have gone and done all that. I know in some ways you could say he didn't have a choice, but it did take courage to get up and to go and do some of those things. Mm-hmm. And it just made me think in my own life, like, do I have that courage? I mean, I'm not life or death in the same way, you know, but that's something that I think about a lot. Like, what am I willing to do, and what are responsibility to others, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. What about you, Reese?
I think in rereading them, I'm seeing a lot of, at first I thought, like, while you guys were talking about how Harry has more personality than I originally thought he did, but that's not it. He has the same amount of personality, and it's just I'm noticing the relationships he has with the people around him. Because I felt like I have a history of like having a hard time having relationships with people beyond my family, and it's like how every person that he meets has some kind of effect on his choices. And like he meets Oliver Wood and he teaches him this whole new game and this whole new skill, and he's, whether or not Harry realizes it, Oliver is like an inspiration for doing Quidditch. And I think at one point he talks about how in the second book he's like, if we had half the energy Oliver did, like if we were all just like a team of Olivers, we'd be the best team, or the hardest working team. And he said that he like never sleeps. All he's doing is practicing Quidditch. And how he's inspired by his friends, and whether or not he realizes how he's affected by each of his teachers, and how all of these people he's making relationships with. It's like every person I come into contact with in my life is like affecting my future in some way. Like they're affecting Harry, and they're affecting his entire story, and they're building this story to a conclusion. But like every one of our relationships is also doing that with our own lives. So I think like lost my train of thought.
I think it's interesting kind of as you're talking about too. I mean, I think we all have that kind of tendency a little bit to like in relationships it's a big risk, right? You know, there are beautiful things and then there are painful things. But Harry throughout, it's like there are a lot of relationships he forms that then he loses, you know, has to lose because of the time he's in. And I feel like it would be really easy to, like, draw away from people. But he also, like, everywhere along the journey, he leans on other people. Like, there's so many things that he does that he could not do alone. So maybe some of it's utility, but I think for him it's more than that. And so it's interesting as you're talking about that, because that's something we all kind of struggle with, of, like, you know, opening up to other people and leaning on people and not feeling like sometimes that we're enough, but... Like, he just kind of throws himself into that continually over and over.
Yeah. I'm just paying a lot more attention to that, or being more aware of it while I'm rereading for the umpteenth time. This time as like an adult, seeing it. The growth of Harry in his formative years, and how it still applies to even adult relationships. It's interesting.
I think it's interesting also that, like, as he grew up, when he was with the Dursleys, like, he didn't have anyone.
Yeah.
So again, like, imagine, I always thought that was cool when he goes off to Hogwarts, like, immediately it's this new world and, like, people know him and he can form these relationships, and it's like, it's what he's wanted.
Yeah.
Forever. I guess, but...
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that too. It's like someone that was abused, basically, as a child, is able to. So, like, in some ways, he did pretty darn well. I mean, so yeah, if he's having a freaking out, teenage, angsty time, and that's fairly normal for teenagers. I mean, that's pretty good for someone that was abused. You know?
Yeah, I'm such a jerk.
Yeah, but he has a good role model with Ron Weasley, with how to be an angsty
How to be a work? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, does Ron have many books that he's not being like that? I mean, again, he's in a different position.
Kind of a
like,
clod. Like,
he's always had someone who's been better than him, or that, you know, others notice before him. So he kind of has a complex about it.
He's just the youngest little brother. Yeah. Yeah.
That's true. Okay, so I have a question, because Reese just talked about rereading for the umpteenth time. Teej, do you reread the books a lot, or do you find there's certain times you read them, or certain ones you go back to?
I have read them a few times. It's something that, because when I read them, when I first got through them all the first time, it was winter, and so I think there's now kind of something in the winter I'm often kind of like wanting to pick them up again. I don't always, like, I started to this winter, and I think I don't know if I had started the fourth one or not. It's out. I can't remember if I actually, like, started it and didn't finish it, or if I didn't actually start it. I don't remember. I don't think I read them yearly. I've read them a few times, but there isn't any kind of a rhyme or reason to it, I don't think.
I feel like they are very wintry books just because there's always a Christmas in the books.
Those feasts sound awesome.
I do not know how I would do at a feast. I mean, there's just too much.
The problem is I know how I would do it at a feast, and it would not turn out well. I was, for our listeners, I was telling them yesterday that I just thought it would be a good idea to eat a huge half of one of those kind of like cookies that you make in a wok kind of thing, one of those big cookies. And that was dinner, and I just thought that would be a great idea. So, feasts.
It went over well, yeah, clearly.
Feasts are dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, that might be our cue.
Yeah.
It's been a great end to the week, though. I feel like this was a long week.
Yeah.
So to be able to spend time with you guys and our audience and just...
It's fun. I look forward to it.
You treasures of listeners, you.
We're
Tweet
so
us
glad you're
at
with us.
Thunderwudgie. Email us at thunderwudgies@gmail.com.
And we'll be forever grateful.
And signing off, this is Reese.
This is Teej.
And Annie.
May Harry Potter be with you always. Have a good night.
Thunderwudgie is hosted by Reese, Annie, and Teej. We're at Thunderwudgie on Twitter, and you can send us an email via thunderwudgies@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
What do you want us to talk about? Tell us your thoughts.
We
Tell
have
us your
ideas. We're open to your suggestions, too.
Yeah, what struck you about Harry Potter? What are characters or plots or other things that you want us to talk about?
How did you get into Harry Potter?
Yeah, when did you first read Harry Potter?
Which is your favorite wuzzle?
Did that almost sound British? Because I was just kind of getting tongue-tied, and then...
Harry
it was
Potter. Hello, Harry.
Harry.
That was
Harry Potter.